Hello, and welcome to today's Happy Hour Tour. I am Brenda Holt with ARP Arizona. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, ARP strengthens communities, and we advocate for what matters most to more than 100 million Americans 50 plus and their families. We focus on health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment, to name a few. ARP also produces the nation's largest circulation publications, the ARP Magazine and the ARP Bulletin. In the months of June and July, we will focus on communications and marketing to help prepare for and live a financially secure retirement. We will provide a wide range of tactics, including digital resources to help consumers increase their financial health. ARP is a wise friend helping consumers manage their money decisions during pre-retirement. Visit us at www.aarp.org/moneytools for tips, tools, and resources. Thank you again, and with that, I'll turn it over to Marshall.
Welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello and good evening. I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. I am so happy you can join us on June 20th. Oh my gosh, so welcome. I know some of you are watching repeat on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Twitch. It's all good. So happy you can be here as we get a chance to share some Arizona history and have a great adventure. My name is Marshall Shore, and I am the host of Arizona History Happy Hour. And so today is June 20th of 2024. Oh my gosh, can you already believe it's so late in the year? And so on this date, back in 1910, the Congress passed an act that basically authorized the territories of New Mexico and Arizona to put together state governments, a constitution, and when all that was done, they would then be admitted into the Union, which we finally did on February 14th of 2012. I'm sorry, of 1912. And so, it is also the first day of summer, or the longest day of the year. I know Burton Bard did some cool stuff this morning to celebrate that, as well as it is National Cream Soda Day. Back in the 1874, somebody substituted ice cream because they ran out of shaved ice. Someone else back in the 1860s used ice cream and soda water to make a drink even colder. In that same time period, there was an ad that ran that just said, ice cream soda, try it, try it, try it. And so many people have. And oh my gosh, we can still do that today. You can go down to our soda fountain in town, which would be McAlpine's, and get yourself an ice cream soda there as well. Now, it also is Queen Amand Day, which is a Welsh pastry that's basically butter, flour, sugar, but a little bit of French flavor thrown in there and elegance. And what an amazing treat. Now, it is also National Ugliest Dog Day. So, some dogs are just so darn hideous that they're adorable. And so, no matter what your dog looks like, love them, give them a hug, give them a treat, and celebrate Ugliest Dog Day with them, even if they're not so ugly. So what can you expect from tonight? Well, we always do a little bit of trivia. We've got some music history. We're going to talk about a little place right here in Arizona. We always have a beverage and a special guest. And so you might wonder, I told you my name is Marshall Shore. I'm also the hip historian. That means I get to play a lot with Arizona history. Why, just this month alone, I've been talking about Keith Haring. We did a variety of programs kind of across the county talking about vintage signs, as well as Disney in Arizona. That was a lot of fun. And a lot of people brought their own stories and things. So I'm looking forward to doing that program again. As well as we did LGBTQ history right here in Arizona. And so I've got a couple more programs coming up. Just next week, I have LGBTQ history out in Salt River Pima Tribal Library. So that's going to be fun being out there. And then out in Youngtown on Wednesday, we're going to be talking about vintage signs. So you'll definitely want to check those out if you're anywhere nearby. And then on to the weekend with lots of Juneteenth events. And I am thrilled to say that I was able to attend Carver as well as the Arizona Heritage Center for a lot of fun. And we were able to recognize Lula Brooks with something that we're calling the Arizona Star Card, which is the first one that we've done. And it's a way to highlight those hidden stories of Arizona. She has an amazing story. So we'll talk about that at another time, but let's go on. I love to hear from you all. So please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. It's all good. I love to hear from you all. And then we have Mr. PJ, who keeps me lubricated and informed about what's going on. So let's hear from him.
Welcome back to Melinda's Alley. This is PJ Vader Barron, and of course, we love our food holidays. We love our celebrations and observances, and today is no exception. Today is National Cream Soda Day. So we're going to put together a little something I'm calling the Float On. Now, this is going to be sort of an inverted version of a root beer float, and you'll see what I mean. We're going to start with a little Madagascar vanilla liqueur. I'm just going to chill it down a tiny, tiny bit. Give it a good stir over ice. We're going to get that into our beautiful flute here. We're going to fill that up with just a little Big Marble Organics ginger beer. Big Marble Organics, made by Chef Dwayne Allen, who for 15 years ran the Bread, Fruit, and Rum Bar here in downtown. Awesome Jamaican restaurant. Their bar program used to use a Jamaican ginger beer that he really loved growing up, and when they changed the recipe, he said no more. Started his own soda company. So I love that attention to detail and that commitment to quality. And so that's going to be the vanilla part, and then the root beer part will actually be this float on top. So I used a root beer whiskey as well as Fernet, which is this really great Amaro that has a little hint of mint and just kind of a cool herbaceousness to it. And then we carbonated and nitrogenated that. So it's going to be your inside out, upside down root beer float. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without a little garnish, a little garniche. So I've got this little cool root beer barrel candy right there. This is your float on. Thanks and cheers.
So, PJ, that was such a tasty kind of a take on a root beer float with that foamed root beer. Was so dang tasty. All right. Well, now's a chance we're going to talk a little bit about a small town in Arizona. And so, when I was at the Arizona Heritage Center, I was right next to some amazing folks talking about Okemah, Arizona, which is right here in Maricopa County. You can see it's just north of the 10 and is kind of sandwiched between 48th Street and 32nd Street from Broadway to the Salt River. And it really began when folks started moving here to work on a ranch back in the 1910s. And by 1927, they were selling small batches of land at a time where a lot of Black folks could not own property. And so they were able to buy a piece of property. Now, a lot of them were coming from Okemah and Boley, Oklahoma. Now, Okemah is named for an American chief from the Kickapoo tribe. Now, in the Great Depression, the Works Progress Administration began providing training opportunities to the Omeka residents, as well as in the 40s, they started getting access to public services like water and electricity that many of us take for granted. And so with that all happening, they felt stronger connection to the community. There were more shops, better jobs, and just a stronger community. But then in the 60s, the Highway 10, as the Broadway curve was being added, it sliced right through the middle of that community, and they never really came back from that. People started moving out because more industry was moving in. And so now they are hoping to put a marker there on someone who owns some property. But there's already the question of what happens when that person sells their property. What happens with that tag? So if you want to know more about the Okemah community, you can go to their website, okemahcommunity.com. All right. And now we're going to get a chance to talk to someone else so you can hear some more Arizona history. I'm going to bring on my friend Bruce. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I am excited to have you on. Oh my gosh. So for folks that don't know about who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, first of all, I know about Okemah. I had two aunts that lived in Okemah. And I used to go there when I was a kid. We would go there and we would ride the trains. The train used to come through there. So I used to go and jump on the trains and ride for a while. I had one aunt that had a farm there. And we used to go and hang out there. And they had all dirt roads. This was back in the 60s. There were all dirt roads everywhere you went. But it was a great place to hang out. And we had a lot of memories. The first time I got a rice spider. It's the first time I got that treat. So buy my book, Porch Stories, and you'll find out what rice spider is. You can get it on any Amazon, everybody. Bruce Nelson, Porch Stories. Go and buy it. You can read about rice spider. But I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. So I am from the Washington Escobedo community. I grew up there in the 60s and 70s. It was a segregated community here in Mesa, Arizona, which most people don't know about. It started, one of the first families to get there was like around 1899. Even though the books say they were there, McPherson family, I think they say they come there like 1905. But I found a newspaper article where Mr. McPherson was in town with his horse and wagon, which was a big deal. And so he was there in 1899. He used to work when they were building the dam. He would take supplies and he would be gone for 2 or 3 days and then he'd come back. So around the early 1900s, that's when you start getting Black people into what is now Washington Escobedo. Then it was called Tuskegee Place and the Mitchell Edition. And so I grew up in that neighborhood, having fun. We had our own restaurant. We had our own restaurants in the 50, corner stores, churches, recreation center, our own swimming pool. The 3 corner stores is where we shopped for food, fresh vegetables, fruits, meats, everything. Every now and then we would go to bashes, but pretty much stayed in that community. Went to school there. When I went there, we went to the 4th grade. Then we got pushed out to the 5th and 6th grade. But my brothers, they went there all the way through the 8th grade. And then they went to high school. So that's a little bit about my background, where I'm from. And I am a documentary filmmaker and exhibit curator. And so I try to keep this history alive by creating projects around those folks.
Indeed. And that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight, because we're going to do some trivia. Now, we don't do trivia like you do bar trivia. We're not just going to answer the question and then move on to the next one. We are going to go through the questions and then come back and tell the stories of those answers. So you can keep track in the chat session. Some folks keep track in a notebook. Whatever makes you happy, you can do just that.
Great.
So, all right. So our first question, the first Black woman in Washington Escobedo to receive the key to the city of Mesa. Who was that? Was it A, Miss Johnson, B, Miss King, C, Mrs. White, or D, Miss Briscoe? So which one of those women do you think were the first ones to receive, the first Black woman to receive the key to the city of Mesa? All right. Question 2. Who was the first African-American principal in Arizona? Wow. All right. Was it A, Miss Johnson, B, Miss King, C, Mrs. White, or D, Miss Briscoe? Who of those was the first African-American principal in Arizona? Question 3. Who was the Black woman who helped register voters in Washington Escobedo? Was it A, Miss Johnson, B, Miss King, C, Mrs. White, or D, Mrs. Briscoe? All right. Question 4. Which Black woman was honored as a history maker in 2023? Was it A, Miss Johnson, B, Miss King, C, Mrs. White, or D, Miss Briscoe? Which one of those women were honored as a history maker? Question 5. The I-10 was completed the same year that A, KSED began broadcasting out of Flagstaff, B, Williams Air Force Base closes, C, Superstition Springs Centers opens in Mesa, or D, the Tucson Historic Preservation Foundation is established. All right. So it's one of those that is the same year the 10 is completed. Question 6. There were no veterans who lived in Washington Escobedo. Is that true or false? I can see Bruce like jumping up. It's like, not yet, Bruce. Hold on. We'll get there. Don't worry. All right. Question 7. What opera singer performed at Phoenix Union High School Auditorium back in 1957? Was it A, Leontine Price, C, Marian Anderson, C, Jesse Norman, or D, Paul Robeson? Which one of those opera singers performed at Phoenix Union High School back in 1957? Question 8. Who was Arizona's first casualty of World War I? Was it A, Matthew B. Juan, B, Paul Dunbar, C, Booker T. Washington, or D, James Baldwin? It's one of those folks. Who was the first casualty? Question 9. Braiding is more than a hairstyle. It was a way to A, communicate marriage availability, B, hide seeds, C, share family lineage, or D, all of the above. So braiding was more than just a hairstyle. What could be done with it? All right. And question 10. Unicycle United was what? A, a basketball team, B, a dance troupe, C, a clown group, or D, a gala for food servers. All right. So while you are going through all of those, trying to lock in your final answers, we are going to take a bit of an air music break. And so coming up this Sunday at the Rhythm Room, the Arizona Music Hall of Fame is doing inductions for some amazing folks. You have Hans Olsen, who's not just a singer and a harmonica player. He is considered to be the best harmonica player in that rack that you wear around your neck, the best one in the world. He went on to help create the Phoenix Blues Society, the Arizona Blues Hall of Fame, the Arizona Music Heritage Foundation, as well as the Arizona Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame. And he was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame as well right here in Arizona. John Rawhouse is a pedal steel guitar player, banjo, mandolin, guitar, Hawaiian guitar. If you've ever seen him perform, you may have seen with Nico Case or a variety of other performers around town or across the country. He also has 2 Grammy nominations for when he was with Nico Case. And then Johnny D or John Dixon, basically kind of my go-to music historian. He has done some amazing events where he will just play records from Arizona and tell the story of all those musicians. Oh my gosh, he's done some amazing stuff. So that's going to be an event not to miss. And sadly, I'm going to be missing it. But 3 great folks are being admitted in. All right. So now, Bruce, are you ready to tell us some answers?
Yeah, we'll see what we can do here.
All right. So, question 1, the first Black woman from Washington Escobedo to receive the key to the city of Mesa was who?
That was Miss Minnie Briscoe.
So, tell us a little bit about Minnie.
So Minnie Briscoe, she's actually my aunt. It's my grandmother's sister.
I had no idea that.
Yes, that's my aunt. That's my grandmother's sister, older sister. And so you see, got the obituary there, which is really great. Their sister Anna Cobb, that's her sister. That's my grandmother.
Wow.
Surprise! I thought I'd surprise you with something. Isn't that great?
Indeed. So tell us
back
about.
in the
Yeah.
Miss Briscoe, back in the 80s, when the community was under siege, they were coming in and buying up homes and gentrifying it, and they really wanted to sort of take Washington Escobedo apart. The city was growing. They felt like, I remember some of the city officials said it's a, ghetto neighborhood should die a natural death and just get rid of it. And so they were doing everything they could to get everybody out of there. And so the community pushed back, led by Jerry Boyd, the first African-American council member. He was a pastor at the time. They pushed back and they said, look, these people are here a long time. You can't just push them out. So they formed a committee, and Miss Briscoe was on that committee. So they went down to City Hall and made statements. They wrote letters, did everything that they possibly could do to push back. And so the newspapers came out, and her neighbor, Miss Harrington, lived right next door to her, which was one of my mom's best friends. And so there was a news reporter that came and talked to her. And I remember Minnie told him, look, I've been here a long time. I'm going to die here. You're not going to get me out of here. I'm not moving. You're not going to buy my property. It's just not going to happen. And so she put up a real pushback, and her neighbor, Miss Harrington, also pushed back. And they were like, no. And so they just kept writing to the city saying, look, this is not going to happen. You just need to invest in our community like you did everything else. And so about 6 months later, 8-9 months later, between 6 months and a year later, she was awarded the key to the city. She was 103 when she got that.
Wow. So I love that she was this activist that then was recognized for all of her work to save the community.
Yeah, she was a go-to person. And her husband, my Uncle John, he was a World War I veteran and very active in political world and social activism. And he was the first World War I African-American veteran to join the VFW in Mesa.
Wow.
Yeah, so she has a long story. And just something for fun, her neighbor, Miss Harrington, like I said, my mom they were good friends. They would go out together, hang out together, do that kind of stuff. Me and my sister used to go over, and she had the backyard. She had a little pond in the backyard, and she had an alligator back there. Little one. And my sister was older than me, and she thought it was funny, so she would throw me over the fence, and I would be running from this little alligator. It could never hurt me. It was small, but yeah, that was some little trivia that I thought that was a fun thing. And after a while, it became a game. The first time I was terrified, but after a while, it became a game. So right next door to Aunt Minnie, Miss Harrington had a little alligator, and I think eventually she got rid of it. Some people said she put it in the canal. I don't know what she did with it.
I've heard stories about that. So.
Yeah, it's possible. So Miss Minnie Briscoe was the first African-American Black woman to receive the key to the city of Mesa. And we still have it. And it's on display when I do my exhibits. We still have it. It's framed nicely, and it's beautiful.
Oh, very cool. All right. So who was the first African-American principal in all of Arizona?
And we should clarify that she's the first female African-American principal.
Oh, all righty.
We need to clarify that because before her, there was a male principal at Booker T. Washington School, but she was the first female. And so she was, I went to school. She was my principal.
Wow.
She was my principal. Her and my grandmother they were around the same age. And so Miss Johnson, she was always, and because she lived in the neighborhood, she lived right across from the school. And interesting fact, she was in the 50s, 51, 52, 53, somewhere around there. She was considered the who's who in Arizona and who's who was in America. Even though with all this notoriety and everything, she still could not live anywhere other than in the Washington Escobedo neighborhood.
Wow. And if you misbehaved, your grandmother was going to find out what you had done.
She would come over to the house, say, Miss Fender, I need to talk to you about that boy. And so, and we would see Miss Johnson. She went to church. She went to I think she was the AME church. No, she went to Montgomery. She went to the Mount Calvary church. That was a church she went to. Okay. But we would, weekend would come and she would be there and we'd see Miss Johnson and she'd go, "You got your homework done?" It's like, "Miss Johnson, it's Saturday. Can we just, it's Saturday. We're not." Yes, I did it, So yeah, Miss Johnson was pivotal in the community. She was the one who brought the black sorority to ASU.
Oh, wow.
I don't know the name of it, but she was responsible for bringing it in. I met them at the Juneteenth celebration over in Scottsdale. And I said, "You all need to know her," because she was responsible for bringing it here. And so it was just, she was very active. She was part of the Urban League. She was part of, before they had the NAACP in Mesa, she was the NAACP member in Phoenix. Because the one in Mesa didn't start until 1962, I think it was. They started in 62. But the one in Phoenix had already been going on. But she was a member of all those different places, and she would take some of the young ladies to luncheons and stuff and prepare them to get to college and to get into work and jobs. So she was very, very active with our folks. I remember I saw in the newspaper they were doing a cotillion and they were all dressed up, and she was there with the other women. Young girls, getting them ready to go off to college, either junior college or start a career. So Miss Johnson was very, very active in our community, and I think of her fondly all the time when I think about Miss Johnson. I received the Miss Johnson scholarship back in the 73, 74, something like that, to go to Mesa Community College. So I got a scholarship. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't very much. I think tuition or something, but I was awarded that. And I used to, when I lived in the neighborhood on Center and University, so I would ride my bicycle all the way down to Mesa Community College to go to school.
Wow.
That was rough. Yeah, that was rough. So yes, Miss Johnson's a big part. Miss Viora E. Johnson, very big part of our community.
Well, and I love she was so willing to share and take some of those young women to places where they were experiencing a larger thing than what they could.
Yeah, she was very big. She would take them on trips over to Phoenix, to areas over there that they, wouldn't have an opportunity to go to. Luncheons were a big thing, take them to luncheons, and some in Mesa, some in Phoenix, and some in Chandler, because back in those days, Mesa and Chandler were very intertwined, because in the early parts of the 30s and 40s, those kids in Chandler went to Booker T. Washington School because they didn't have a school in Chandler. I think Coy Payne, the principal of Chandler, the first black principal, he went to school at Booker T. Washington School.
Oh, wow. All right, question 3. Who was the black woman who registered voters in Washington Escobedo?
Yeah, Escobedo, that would be Miss Lily Mae King. Miss Lily Mae King, she had some older sons, which were my brother's age. Miss King, she was part of the founding member of the AME Bethel Church in Mesa. She was one of the founding members. AME Bethel Church, that was the second black church in the neighborhood. The first one was Mount Calvary, and she was one of those founding members. And I remember on Saturday nights, she would always do some kind of fundraisers. They would be cooking tacos and selling tacos for like 15, 20 cents, raising money to give scholarships, to buy toys for kids. She was always very, very active She was awarded Woman of the Year from the black newspaper here in town. Can't think of the name of it right now. But yeah, she was very popular. And I remember she would walk through the neighborhood and register you to vote and tell you who to vote for and why. She was like, this is what you need to do. But she was very active. Miss King was her and my mom were around the same age. So I would see them hanging out all the time. But yeah, it's a great picture I have right there.
So this is actually from Selma. It was back in the mid 60s, and it was all about allowing them, I mean, basically black folks to register. And
right.
So when I thought it was like, and I was like, just because black people haven't always had the right to vote.
Yeah, people forget that, they didn't. And same with women. It's like, it's only recently that happened. It seems like a long time ago, and it's really not. And then when you were allowed, registering was a problem because they would some kind of registry poll tax, or you have to answer some ridiculous questions or something, it's like nobody could do that. And so, yeah, it was a big deal. It was a big deal to get registered. And Mesa was, just as major there was as any place else in the country, which is really very exciting. So Miss King just took it upon herself and just really was like, look, you all need to do this. There is power in the vote. You need to know that. It's like with Miss Briscoe, my aunt, the same way that you've got to unite. You've got to come together. You got to be a coalition of people that go to City Hall when they're having the meetings and take the ticket and make your 3-minute statement. Make sure Miss King would always say, to practice what you're going to say before you get up there. Go get your ticket, go out back, talk through what you're going to say, and then come back in and then you're ready. So, yeah, they did a lot. The women in the neighborhood just did so much for our community. They're definitely, and that's why I have the exhibit called Matriarchs of Washington Park, because they were so, they really kept things together. They really pushed them. But Miss King, I remember, think of her fondly, Miss Lily Mae King. And I think she came from down south, is where she came from. When she must have gotten there in the 40s because, like late 40s, I guess, because that's when the second church came up. So, yeah, that's Miss Lily Mae King, just to register people in the community, the Washington Escobedo community.
That's great. And then question 4, which black woman was honored recently as a history maker in 2023?
Mrs. White's Kitchen. We always called it Mrs. White's Kitchen. I don't know how that golden thing came from. It was always Mrs. White's Kitchen. That's how I remember it. Maybe they did that later, or maybe they had that. We just never saw it. It was always, you're going to go to Mrs. White's Kitchen? Yeah, man, we're going to Mrs. White's Kitchen, man. That was just the way we referred to her. We go over. So and where her restaurant was, now there was no light rail back in the day. They were in Washington. The barbershop was near her. And so when you came, you went to the barbershop, you got something to eat. My brothers would take me over there and they, go in the barbershop, talk a bunch of politics or whatever. And then he'd say, we're going to go over to Mrs. White's Kitchen. The guys would sit around the barbershop talking about life and what was going on and how you're supposed to behave and how you shoot craps and how you play poker. My brothers take me over there and learn that stuff at the barbershop. So the barbershop of the black community is not just where you go get your hair cut. You learn some skills at the barbershop. And then somebody would come in and they, I was over at Mrs. White's Kitchen. Oh, what you got today? Oh, I got some smothered chicken. Oh, yeah, we would come bring stuff. Sometimes they would buy stuff and come and eat there. And then other times they take it over. Mrs. White's Kitchen. Think of her fondly. Been around for a long time.
Indeed, and, she is such a kind of her own dynasty. I mean, now with Lolo's Chicken and Waffles as well, being a local chain. So,
yeah, that's her son, I believe. That runs, Lolo's Chicken and Waffles, and he does a pretty good job. I mean, it's not like Roscoe, but it's a pretty good job. Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles original. I'm sorry, y'all. But, Lolo's is nice, but Roscoe's Chicken and Waffle, man, that's the staple one. But yeah, Mrs. White been around. She just was, and always helping people. Always giving to people and Sundays and she'd send some pies. Somebody had a funeral, she'd always send some pies. She'd send some pies, and I guess before KFC bucket of chicken, she would send some fried chicken and stuff. She would just do that because the mortuaries were right down the street from there.
Oh, right, yeah.
There were two of them down there. So, they would come and stuff. But yeah, Mrs. White, she's like a staple in the Phoenix community, and I'd see her over. She'd come over to Mesa on occasion when they were doing something, or over to Okima when they were having the missionaries meeting and stuff. So I would see her as a kid. I remember seeing her. Mrs. White, we got to celebrate Mrs. White. Mrs. White's kitchen. So that's what you all need to call it, okay? Mrs. White's kitchen.
All right. So question 5, the I-10 was completed the same year as?
That is just so crazy. The Superstition Springs Center in Mesa. I was like, wow, that's something, man. 1990. And that changed the trajectory of Okima because it came right through Okima.
Right.
And just took it because, before the 90s, you go from Mesa to University, took you right to Phoenix. And Okima's right there. So it was University, Broadway, Southern, 48th, 24th Street, right in there. That was the area. So when that freeway came through, they bought those homes out, and they probably didn't give them the best prices that they should have. But yeah, because before then, my brothers were always talking about when they go to California, you had to go Route 66. You take University, and you drive, you hit another road to get Route 66. But then when freeway came, it was like, oh man, it's so much faster. Or you go the back way. You go back way through Tucson, through Yuma, coming to San Diego.
Oh, right.
Which is, I think, the 8. I think that's
that would be the Yeah,
it wasn't the 8 then. I don't remember what it was, but they would talk about sometimes they go, we're going to go to San Diego instead of LA because it was closer. It's about an hour and a half closer. But that freeway sprung up. And Superstition Springs Mall was a big deal in Mesa when it opened up. That was the second mall. The Fiesta Mall was the first mall.
Okay.
And Superstition Springs was the second mall, and they both were doing well. A little bit of trivia about the first mall, Fiesta Mall. I used to work for Sears, and that opened back in '74, I guess. And they decided Sears was downtown Mesa at the catalog store, which would be online shopping.
Oh yeah.
Time. You go and you order through the catalog, and then they mail it out to you. So that was online at the time. So I worked at that store, and they decided they were branching out. So they were building a bigger store. And so they were moving into the Fiesta Mall. They were one of the anchor stores along with some other ones. And I think one of the stores pulled out with some other stores, and Sears said, we're going in anyway. And so they were moving pretty quick. We got in there. When we first started working on it, you open up the back door and it was nothing but land. And then finally they moved very quickly. They built that place up, and that was the 74, 75, somewhere around there. That was when they first started with where you scan your items and beep it. That was the first. Sears was one of the first stores to have that. And we did a whole training on it. It was a nightmare because the thing didn't work half the time.
Technology.
Yeah, it was, and I remember when they were trying to explain it to us, some of the older guys were like, what are you talking about? They just could not, they were having a hard time operating. You put this thing, well, how's it going to know how much it is? What if it brings up the wrong price? And they go, no, we've got it scanned, we've got the numbers, it's got a little computer thing in there, and it was a major deal. It was a major deal. I guess Super Stream was the third mall. Tri-City Mall was the second. The first mall, and then Tri-City was first, and then Fiesta, and then
okay.
Because I remember Tri-City Mall back there before Sears opened, and you could go to the escalator. That was a big deal. Go ride the escalator.
Indeed, those are always fun to ride.
Simple thrills, huh? Everybody's going down there. Okay, so yeah, just a little trivia about the malls in Mesa. And my buddies, just so you know, we had bicycles and we would do wheelies and raise money in the parking lots. One wheel on those bicycles, raising money, people, making bets. Anyway, all right, what we got next? Here we go.
All right, so there were no vets who lived in Washington Escobedo.
That is false. That is false. There were a ton of them, and I have an exhibit called "Veterans of Washington Escobedo." There are over 40 in the exhibit, and I'm still finding more.
Wow.
Still finding more. And so this poster here features Mr. Lloyd Boyd at the top left.
Oh, you've been mentioning his name a lot as we talk.
Yeah, you hear him. He was my go-to guy whenever I wanted to. He's up in the left-hand corner. He just passed away 2 years ago. He turned 100 years old, and 3 days later he passed away.
Oh.
So that's him up there in the left corner. And next to him, to the bottom, that is John Briscoe, Miss Briscoe's husband. And that's my Uncle John. That's him. And then right next to him, down here, that's Mr. James Freeman. He was World War II. So World War II, World War I. And then at the bottom, this is going to trip you out, that's my dad. That's my dad. David Nelson, that's my father. He was a World War II veteran.
Wow.
And then the guy in the big background in the back, the big guy there, that is George Washington Davis, my great-grandfather who was a Buffalo Soldier.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of history in that. Isn't that crazy?
That is amazing.
Yeah. So we have lots of veterans. And James Freeman has a wonderful story. He, and I'm producing a documentary about the veterans. And they wrote us, they did an interview with him in Mesa at War. They had a magazine called Mesa at War, and he tells his story. And, you know, they just celebrated D-Day, 60 years or 80 years or whatever it is, over in Paris. The president was there. And you hear about D-Day all the time. And if you watch those old footage, you never see any African Americans in that footage. But they were there. They were there. And James Freeman is one. He told his story. And he said when they got there, they were taking heavy casualties. It was a nightmare. And I said, well, but you never see them. I said, well, what were they doing? He said, we were dragging the guys to safety, and the dead bodies, we were dragging them off. That's what they were responsible for. And I was like, oh my God, and he remembered getting wounded. He gets shot, and he tells his story. They got there, they got it under control. They sent him off to Paris for recovery. And you would thought that would be the end of it. He'd go home. No, they sent him right back into action. Right back into action. He didn't get to leave, even though he had been wounded. And it was only the French officers that pushed and said, this man should get the Purple Heart. If it had been not for them, he would not have gotten it.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? And so James Freeman, he tells his story. He said when he got out, the war ended, and they brought him back to New York. And he says, man, seeing the Statue of Liberty took on a whole nother meaning, to him. So he gets there and he tells a story. He says, well, you get there and you get off the ship, and then you go to the barracks or whatever, and then they get you in, they're getting ready to process you. And there's two lines you can stand in. You can stand in one line to re-up, or you can stand in line and they give you $100 or $200, what it was, and send you back to where you came from. You had a choice. And he said he stood there and looked in both lines, and he says, I'm going home. So he went in that line, got his $100 or $200, got on the train, and took the train, and he was going to California. And he had been to Mesa because most of the troops, the Negro troops, were inducted in San Pedro and then sent to Fort Huachuca for the basic training. And so he was familiar with the area. So he came into the train, and he got off the train to get something to eat, and he ran into some guys that he knew, he said. And they were like, where are you heading? I'm going to California. Said, why don't you just stay here, man? There's opportunities here in Mesa, even though, you can't eat in the restaurants. You're talking 40s. You're still better than there's like. And so he ended up meeting a lady and stayed, and he married his wife here in Mesa. And that's how he planted himself in Mesa, Arizona.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is. Thank you for sharing that story. That's incredible. All right, question 7. So what opera singer performed at Phoenix Union High School back in 1957?
So yeah, it was Marian Anderson, and I'm so glad you found this photo. This just really blows me away. I think she was here 57. I think she was here once before that. I can't remember. I saw the date. She was doing they were doing a big fundraiser, and I think it was going to be at ASU or near there. And Miss Johnson had sponsored it, brought her there. And Mr. Boyd, which you heard me talk about, he said, yeah, I was there. He said they were not happy with that. People pushed back against it. They did not want her to come and sing. They want this Black women coming here for some reason, but they made it happen anyway. The big fundraiser for her. But Miss Johnson was responsible for bringing her here. And it would have been a great tragedy if they had not had her perform. And it takes us back to Leontine Price, which was before her, when she was singing at the in New York was. Remember, the Daughters of the Revolution protested and said they're not going to let this Black woman sing it. So they went to the Washington, the Lincoln Center, and right out there, that's where she did the show, and it was packed. And so we had a still kind of kickback from there. This is years later. Years later, we're still having that. So same kind of thing here. Maybe Arizona was just like, oh, we don't want that to happen. But kudos to Miss Johnson for really persevering and saying this is something we need to see. Let me see what's on sale. Box office tickets. How much were the tickets? $3. Oh my goodness, $2, $125.
Yeah, how times have changed.
Whoa, but it was hard to get $1.25 those days.
Right, very much so. All right, question 8: who was Arizona's first casualty of World War I?
Here we go. Matthew B. Wan. This guy, wonderful story. And I think I sent you the link. They have named the American Legion of the VFW in Chandler after him. And also, I think they put next to him is McCain. They put McCain's name next to him also.
Okay.
But he's on there too. But Matthew B. Wan, and this guy I found accidentally when I was doing research for my veterans exhibit. And I was just looking through the newspapers trying to find stuff. And I came across his story. And this guy, he was 24, 25 when he got drafted, which is kind of old because most of the guys were like 18, 19, 20 maybe. So he was old considering at the time. And he was from a tribe here, Indian tribe. And it was like, I always think about that. Now imagine he's born, if he was 25 in 1918, go a few years back, 1900, go 5 years back, 1895, 1890. Yeah. So he probably, remember during the 1890s, we were still warring with the Indians. The Buffalo soldiers were still warring with them. And I was like, God, that had to be quite the dilemma for him to go off and fight for this country. I'm sure his father and his grandfather told him stories about the Indian wars. And that always just sticks in my mind. So he's a better man than I am. But he went, he fought, and he was shipped off, and he was on a boat shipped over there. And he was there probably, I think it's like maybe 2 or 3 months, if that. And the boat got shot, sank, and he was killed. And they brought him back, and he was the first casualty from World War I. And I don't think they talk about him enough to commemorate that. This guy gave his life fighting for this country, for a better life for everybody. And here he was being, ostracized and stuff. And cool thing about him, I remember reading, he was part of a circus, and I'm still researching that. I'm trying to figure out what he would have been doing in the circus.
Oh, we should chat at some point because I've got all kinds of. It's like I know there's like circus archives around the country, so we should definitely chat about that because I love the circus history of Arizona. So.
I'd like to find out where he was, if it was here or if it was in Texas or where it was exactly, and what did he do, in the circus. I would love to, but yeah, we should, because I'm telling his story in my documentary, and I'd like to tell a fuller story about him. His family is still around. I did talk to them years ago. I'm going to reach out to them again, and hopefully do some interviews with him so they can tell him more about it. But yeah, Matthew B. Wan, that's somebody we should always remember. First casualty from World War I in Arizona. Quite the feat.
Wow. All right. So question 9, braiding is more than just a hairstyle. What else could be done with it?
And you hide seeds, but it was all of the above. Actually, it was all of the above.
See, I kind of wondered. I was like, when I did that, I couldn't think of another thing, and I was like, I bet he's gonna say it's all of the above.
And they also did maps in the weaving, the braiding. There would be a map in the braids. So it's all the above, all of those things we use.
Wow.
So they would plait your hair, and it would tell you which directions to go through the hair. So they would take a look at people, and women wore a lot of hats in those days, the rags around their heads. So nobody gave it a second thought, because they would, and probably some of the astrological signs would be in their head saying, Big Dipper, or probably things like that for you to look for,
wow.
Or they would map in, go down here, kind of. So yeah, it was all of the above. Those are the things it was doing, and that's only coming to light in the last, 10 years, that people are really discovering that. My grandmother told me years ago when I was a kid, when she used to braid my sister's hair, and she said, there's a history with braiding hair. There's not just braiding hair. We was like 8 or 9, but like, yeah, whatever, Grandma, just braid the hair. It was fun. But now I understand. She told us, and we just kind of forgot about it. But it was a big deal, because remember, my grandmother was born 1898, and her mom was born into slavery, so she'd heard those stories firsthand. So yeah, braiding hair was more than just a hairstyle. It was a way of life, and it was a way of communicating different information to people, identifying things with people, which is really, really, really cool. So yeah, hair braiding, it's not just for fashion.
Right. No, and I thought that was amazing that there were so many things that you could communicate with by braiding your hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad and it's so funny, because I think people often think history is set in stone, and it's not. What you were just talking about, the fact that the idea of braiding hair for more than just fashion is a relatively new idea that generations ago they talked about this.
Yes.
So we're kind of relearning what we forgot.
We're learning, yeah, because like I said, I'd forgotten about it. I remember they would braid my sister's hair, or they would sit around, they would have those conversations about hair braiding. But yeah, it's more than just a hairstyle.
Wow. All right. And so Unicycle United was what?
That's me right there. No, that's Danny Lynn. That's the Unicycle United was a basketball team that I started. I love that picture of Danny Lynn. Boy, we had a blast. And this is just the craziest story. We were living in the neighborhood, and I had gone way over here, East Mesa. I was hanging out over there on my bicycle. I don't know what I was doing. I can't remember. But I was hanging out over there, and I've been gone all day and late, and this stuff. It was a Saturday. And then I came back home that evening, and my buddies were like, man, where you been, man? Where you been? So we went to the circus. They had free tickets to the circus. And they were like, God, you missed it, man. And I was able to ride a unicycle. They were like, we saw these guys in the circus playing basketball on unicycles. And I'm like, what? They go, yeah. So we went to the school, and they gave me the ball, and I started trying it. I was like, oh yeah, I can do this, because I knew how to play basketball. I knew sports. I knew most sports. I could do, so I started shooting it, and I thought, well, that's just crazy. So my buddies were laughing about it, and we just kind of played around, and then just kind of forgot about it. And then I said, well, I'd like to see them. And so it would be kind of cool to see them. And so I decided, well, maybe there's something to that. And so at this point, we had moved out of the neighborhood. We were living out in East Mesa. And I decided I was going to practice. So I could, when they came back into town, I was going to join them. Everybody wants to join the circus, right? And so I would ride near Pioneer Park here in Mesa. I would ride either on my bicycle or a unicycle. And there was this old guy that I would see. I'd see on my bicycle. I would always wave to him, and he'd wave to me. And, being polite to old people, Mama always said be polite to old folks. And he'd see me on my unicycle, and he'd wave, and I'd wave. And he'd see me with the ball. And Finally, one day I was on my 10 speed and he flagged me down. He came out, he could hardly move. He flagged me, come here, I want to talk to you. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is this old white man want with me? Leave me alone. So yes, sir, how can I help you? He said, you're the guy that rides that one wheel thing. I go, yes, that's me. He said, you ever thought about starting a team? Because he had seen them on TV. And I go, no, I don't know how to do that. And he goes, well, I'll help you. I'm like, man, I don't know. I was probably 19 or 20. I don't know anything about that. How do we start? He goes, well, he says, do you know anybody over the Parks and Rec? I said, well, yeah, I know a guy in the park. He said, bring him over and we'll talk about it. Mr. Siemens was his name. So I said, Mr. Siemens, this old man wants to talk about this. Can you please come? We'll come and talk to him. And he said, well, this is what he's going to start it and you're going to help him. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can do this. Yeah, I've got some from the parks going to help me. And so he said, what are we going to do? We're going to have a contest. We're going to do it on Saturday. We're going to have a contest. And we'll put an ad in the paper. And he said, we've got basketballs and stuff that you can use for free. And it was a Saturday. And the old man was there. And he was down there in his wheelchair. And we were going to start at 12 o'clock. So we got there about 11:30. Set up everything. We're going to do some tricks and everything. 11:30 and there's nobody there. 11:45, nobody there. 11:45, 47, 11:50, nobody there. 11:55, nobody there. I'm like, dude, nobody is going to come. 11:58, nobody there. 12 o'clock, 12:01, they start coming out of everywhere. Big ones, little ones, fat ones, tall unicycles. I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I was panicking. Like, what was the plan? What was the plan? I said, what were we supposed to do? And they said, calm down. We're going to stick with the plan. And so a lot of them thought it was going to be a demonstration. And they said, no, we're going to be starting a team. And so I did some of my tricks. They did some of their tricks. And the Parks and Rec said, we're going to help you guys. And you're going to start a basketball team that's going to be here. And so that's how we got started. And so the old man was like, well, you need a sponsor. He goes, and I said, well, there's a bicycle shop near my house. He goes, we're going to go there to talk to him and he's going to sponsor you. Like, okay. So he Pat Swin Cycler. He went up to Pat, this young man, you need to sponsor them. So he was like, what? Yes, you need to, these guys are doing this thing. You need to it'll be great. So he paid for the uniforms. He paid for the insurance in case something happened to us. He gave us the unicycles at cost if we didn't have one. He did all the repairs for free. He taught us how to. He was so nice to us, and the team just took off. We played at the park. We would practice like twice a week, and we noticed as people saw us, they would start planning picnics at the time when we would be practicing. Because they'd see the show, they're like, these guys. So they would, and every time we'd come to meet more and more people, it's like, where are these people coming from? And they knew that was the practice time. So that team, we had the team, and crazy story about that. I remember early in the rehearsal, before I got my car, I got a Volkswagen, and I used to ride from my house to the park. And I'd have to carry the basketballs. I'd have like 3 basketballs and a net. And I was riding along a back street, and a police officer saw me, and he just see him. He was like, oh man, he pulled me over. What are you doing? And because they had the Mesa Parks and Rec stamped on them. And he just knew I stole it. He's like, you stole. I said, no, I did not steal these basketballs. I'm going down here. I said, Mr. Seaman gave me these things. He said, boy, you just lying. I said, you don't believe you can take me down there? He'll tell you. I just wanted to get a ride because I was tired. So he threw me in the back seat. He threw the basketballs. He threw the like, you come down. He came down there and he worked on, knocked Mr. Seaman's this floor. Look at the stamp, these basketball with the bike rack. He said, oh, Bruce, you're late. You're supposed to be practicing. The man was like, he was pissed off. This officer was so pissed off. I was like, that's what you get, man, you know? So, yeah, we had a time, man. We performed in parades. We did a marathon, the Muscular Dystrophy Marathon. We raised money for that. We did Phoenix Suns halftime game. Wow. We did. We got so good at them. we started doing fundraisers. We would do for any disability or fundraiser was on TV. We would do fundraiser, and we talked to miniature golf, and we played golf on them, putt. We would do that on them, and we raised money for people. Then we went to I think it was over in the Arizona Biltmore. They used to have tennis over there. I don't know if they still do. You have tennis courts over there, and they'd have competitions and showing. We learned to play tennis. We played tennis on those unicycles. we were so good at that. And then I was like, I said, well, we want to do halftime at a football game. And it was a football game. We don't want to see basketball. Don't worry, we'll play soccer. So we learned to play soccer. Right with one-legged kick. Oh, yeah, we just really had a blast. And we got so good at it that we challenged KNIX. They were doing those fundraisers. We did a halftime basketball game. They were on the feet and we were on the unicycles. And it was just a blast. It was a big fundraiser. And we only played for like maybe 10 minutes or whatever. I think I still have some photos of that. I have to find them. But KNIX, those guys were so great. We did it at Westwood High School, halftime at that. So yeah, it was a blast. Unicycles United. And for about a year, the Kiwanis Club out of Calgary had been following us, unbeknownst to me. And finally, one of the presidents approached us and he said, hey, we really like what you guys do. You guys are amazing. We're like, well, thank you. They said, no, you really something. He said, you know what? We have a big fair in Calgary and we want you to come and perform there. Would you be willing to do that? Now, I didn't know where Calgary was in Canada. I'm like, yeah, we'll come. We'll come. We'll come and do it, dude. Yeah. And he goes, well, it's in Canada. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, it's way up north. And we were like, yeah, I guess, I have to talk to my mom, see what, And so they said, we'll work it out. So you can either fly, you can take the bus. I said, you got to fly us. We're big time. You can't be on the bus. Now, I had never been on a plane, and most of my guys had never been on a plane before. That's a long flight. I don't know if you know. That's a long flight from Arizona to Calgary. And so they said yes. So it was a Red Deer Exposition Fair, and it was the summertime. And so we put together, and we got on the plane, and we were all just like, wow, this is like amazing, man. In those days, they fed you, it was good food. Those days. Now it's pretty bad, but and people could smoke on the plane in those days. You had a smoking section.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got there, and I remember they met us. That we stayed with some families. They put us up, and we got off the plane. And the guy that had hired us had not seen us, and he was just like, I don't know about these guys. He's a guy. He's a bunch of kids. And he goes, yeah. He goes, this is what we're paying for. And the guy says, show me something. Hey, no problem. We went to the thing. We did a show. Right, got off the plane. Got in. Did a show. The guy was like, oh my God, we're going to extend you another week. This is just like great. It's like we were there, and we were there for about 10 days. I think 2 weeks almost.
Wow.
Weeks. And I was trying to be an entrepreneur. We had gotten some newspaper coverage, and I got some of the photos, had them printed. We did autographs. And I sold autographed pictures and Unicycles United. And it's called Unicycles United because anybody that could ride it, I wanted them in. It wasn't a black thing. It wasn't a white thing. This has brought us together. The team was originally, when I first did it, was just me and a bunch of young white kids. And then over the time, it matched with black kids and white kids in it. So that's where I came up with the name Unicycles United. I thought that was... even then, just so funny how thinking about how we connect, how people connect.
Right.
Was a big deal. But I used to take us around in my my Volkswagen. I don't know how we got all those unicycles in there and those people, but we did. We'd have 3 unicycles in the back and 4 guys in the car. It was crazy. It was Isn't that a crazy story?
Indeed. Oh my gosh. All right. I always like to ask people how they did, but always remember it's not how you did on the trivia. The fact that look at all these amazing stories that Bruce has shared about so many amazing people that were so into the community that they just kind of helped and helped and helped. So if you want to follow Bruce, you can find him. His website is nebproductions.com. On Facebook, NEB Productions. Also, there's the Matriarchs of Washington Park, which I hijacked some of these photos from, as well on an Instagram. You are
Great.
NEB Productions 1. Any exhibits coming up or anything?
Yes, that we just finished the Take Me to the Water Festival, May the 18th. That just closed, and that was celebrating the community. And there was a collection of murals, and so now I'm looking at putting those murals on display at the library. We're waiting for a date. We don't have a date yet. We're going to be in the Mesa Public Library. That'll be the next exhibit that I'm working on. We've got some corporate sponsors that like what we do, because it always costs to do these things. It's not free. You gotta pay for them. So they're going to fund that. So it'll be there probably about 6 weeks. We're looking at maybe towards the end of summer.
Okay.
So we'll have to get a date. And also just working out the veterans of Washington Escobedo. Hopefully will be at the Mesa Mix Center, which is the Sidney Poitier Film School here in Mesa.
Oh, yeah.
The Matriarchs exhibit was there first, but then Veterans is next. So we're looking at that. We're talking about doing that, though. I always like to do Veterans for the whole month of November. You know, I don't like to just go to so the first week in November, it will be on there. It'll stay there. And usually what happens when I do that, it usually does really well. So we end up leaving it through right up until like Christmas Eve. You know, usually is what we do. Last year we did it at the Mesa Historical Museum, and they liked it so much, and people were coming. They just left it up through all the holidays, and it really well. So that's what I got coming up. And of course, I'm in post-production on 2 documentaries. Red Line Veterans, we're in post on that. We're still looking at that. See Jane Run, a documentary. We just came back from Indonesia. We're in post on that. And in development, a documentary called Looking for Laura Nelson. So always got a bunch of stuff going on at once. I'm so glad that you asked me to be part of this. I love your show. I've seen your show, seen you around town all the time. I'm glad I could be a part of it.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of the stories you found, as well as your own story. So have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much. Thanks for folks tuning in. Tune in next time. Same time, same station, same all that stuff.
Indeed. All right. Oh my gosh, Bruce, thank you so much. That was so cool. I love learning about all those folks that were so community minded and such great stewards for so many communities. So now we are from the vault. And so, you know, I was not quite sure what to do tonight, but then my friend Terry posted that she just was able to get a tour of the Waddell studio, his home and ranch up in Palo Verde. Even though him and his wife have passed away, they left behind tons of art and other things. And so he did, if you ever go down to the Herberger Center, he did those statues in front of there. He also did a group of statues that there is a pair now down at Carver that are basically referencing the 1963 bombing in Birmingham. And so you can see those in the courtyard at Carver. And so I thought it was really cool. They were able to reach to the family and have a family member take them through on a tour. So, you know, keep your eye out for more Waddell statues around. There's various as you go around, and they all came from that Verde Valley area. So this is why I say, if you're watching on Facebook, please share, because, oh my gosh, we've got so many amazing stories to share, and we are going to keep bringing you more Arizona love stories. So please reach out to me if you have questions, stories, suggestion, comments. I love to hear from you all. I want to give a shout out to, of course, Bruce, but also my friends Chris and Cole, who did that great little video to start with, and always PJ, who keeps me well informed about what's going on around town. We are going to end on showing the video about Keith Herring, as he was painting with about 20 students from South Mountain High School. They were doing a mural right downtown. And so I think in a lot of ways it kind of hinges on the murals that are happening now, because he was working with so many young artists at that time. So everyone, I will see you next month. July 18th will be our next show. So be sure to check it out. And everyone, have a great rest of your night. And so with Keith, you see, here he is. He was supposed to show up hours early for this event. He literally showed up late, and he didn't have time to map out or draw out this 124 foot by 12 foot mural. So he just grabbed his paint and did it free form. And all those kids did a little bit and filled in some of their own colors. And so everybody got involved with it. It was a focus of the community for about 5 years and has gone missing. So more on that story as it unfolds. So look at all those students. Because South Mountain High School was at this point and still is an arts magnet school. So there's that colorful mural, which is now missing. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your night, and I will see you all next month, if not before.